In the late 1980s, Honda wanted to appeal to the more casual motorcycle rider, the kinder, gentler type. The ones who prefer a more sanitized experience to the badass loud pipes and bright chrome of a cruiser. To accomplish that, Honda brought in their automotive engineers to work with their motorcycle engineers to design a motorcycle that would appeal to both types of Honda owners. The result was the Honda Pacific Coast 800.
Introducing the Pacific Coast from Honda. It is the beginning of a new day.
Honda basically designed a motorcycle for people who don't ride motorcycles. And then they wondered why it didn't sell very well. In 1989, the first year the PC800 came out, Honda sold just 7,000 motorcycles worldwide. That number dropped to almost half of that in 1990, leading to the model disappearing from American shores for the next 3 years. It came back in 1995, but sales barely reached 1,000 bikes per year in North America for every year after that until 1998, the year the model was discontinued. That year, they only sold about 500 bikes. And this is one of those final 500 motorcycles. This is my 1998 Honda Pacific Coast 800. It's the most stripped down version of the bike Honda ever offered. It has a traditional fender instead of the Goldwing-like full wheel covering. It's also missing features like a stereo or self-canceling turn signals. Even despite that, it sold new in 1998 for $8,700. Now for comparison, a Kawasaki Concours 1000cc bike sold new for $8,000 that year. And it was really hard to justify paying more for less when it came to the PC800. Another controversial aspect when it was introduced in 1989 was its styling. In wanting to appeal to the non-motorcyclist, Honda wanted to make this as non-motorcycly as possible. So instead of exposed guts and gleaming chrome, Honda covered it all in plastic. This is a pretty standard practice on modern bikes, but it was very unusual in 1989 when the model first came out. Even if it had a little bit of a plastic fairing and maybe a plastic tailpiece, it was extremely unusual, almost unheard of, for the entire bike to be covered, especially the engine area. And we can't talk about styling without mentioning the PC800's big butt.
Oh my God, Becky, look at her butt. It is so big. She looks like one of those rap guys' girlfriends.
Let's face it, this bike has a big ass, but there's a good reason for that. If you take the key and open up the fuel filler cap, by the way, this is not the gas tank. The gas tank is down here under the seat to optimize handling and weight distribution. And, well, the actual fuel filler is in here. It's also a great place to keep your Easy Pass. And there's also a lever that would not look out of place from a Honda Civic. Pull this lever and open the lid, it reveals a cavernous storage area back here. I traveled all the way to Cape Breton Island, Nova Scotia, and back for a week, and I was able to carry everything I needed in these two compartments, the top trunk, with my tent and sleeping bag strapped to the passenger seat. I have fit a 24-pack of beer inside this compartment. Another rather advanced aspect of this bike is the engine hidden underneath all this plastic. It looks modern, but it's actually a very traditional V-twin based on that from the Honda Shadow VT800. Kind of ironic that the engine from a traditional cruiser goes into a bike that's supposed to distance itself from those cruisers as much as possible. It may be a V-twin, but it sounds about as different from a cruiser as you can. In Instead of loud pipes and the traditional Harley lope, it sounds more like George Jetson's car. But Honda modified the engine specifically for the PC800 and its very specific purpose. The lifters are hydraulic, common in cars, but very unusual in motorcycles, especially in 1989, where adjusting the valves manually was just a standard part of maintenance. You don't have to do that on this bike. It has automatic cam chain tensioners that you never have to adjust. I mean, honestly, after a major fuel and electrical system service about 5 years ago, the only things I've had to change on this bike are the oil and the tires. It's amazingly reliable. This is a good jack of all trades for the road. It's good for cruising around on. My wife rides on the back with me quite regularly these days, very comfortably. She likes the back of this much better than my Honda Shadow. And you can go touring on it. But this bike's main purpose, the reason it was designed, was for commuting. And it is excellent at that. So that's all well and good. But what is the PC800 like to actually ride? Let's find out. All right, let's do a little 0 to 60 test, shall we? And that was this many seconds. Handling, again, it's not sport bike good by any means, but it's pretty decent. PC800 weighs about 620 pounds. It's not a light bike, and having picked this one up, I can definitely vouch for that. But when you're in motion, it's surprisingly agile. Like I said, the gas tank is down below the seat. This is where the air filter lives. So it's very responsive for its weight. Very easy to flick it back and forth and in and out of corners. It's pretty good at just cruising in a straight line like this, minding my own business. Very comfortable. I'm 6 feet tall with pretty long legs, so I do find my legs after a long day on the road, they do feel a little cramped. I wouldn't mind having even a couple more inches to stretch my legs a little bit, but that's a personal fitness thing. Motorcycles are not one size fits all. Let's test that acceleration one more time. I slipped the clutch a bit going into third. I don't know if it's this particular bike or the model in general, but the clutch does seem to be a little weak. It's hydraulic, which means you never have to adjust a cable or anything, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem to grip that well. High-speed sweepers are a joy on this thing. Going through these sweepers at 60 miles an hour, and I could go a whole lot faster if I felt like it. So see how it does on the big roads. Let's see how it does on the back roads. That was a wheelie. Because it's a V-twin, you don't have to rev it out to get good acceleration. It's got the low-end torque. It's very usable power. I mean, the average commuter isn't going to want to ring it all the way out to 7,500, which is thread line, anytime you want to get some power going. And you don't have to with this. You've got grunt pretty much everywhere above 2,000 RPM. Oh yeah, back and forth with the curves, this thing just tilts right in. Also helps if you know how to corner. Yes, I know the windshield's dirty. Deal with it. I ride so often, it gets dirty as soon as I leave the car wash. And we hit traffic. But since we're slowing down, let's talk about the brakes. Dual disc brakes up front. Very powerful. They haul this thing down great. The back is a drum, but that's okay. Most of your braking's in the front anyway, and that's where most of your braking power is on this bike. It's shaft drive, so there's no chain or belt you have to maintain. And unlike some bikes, I notice absolutely no jacking effect from large amounts of throttle. Many shaft drive bikes will tend to lift the rear end under acceleration, which is the exact opposite of what you want. You want it to squat down, transfer more weight onto the back tire for better grip and better acceleration. But you get my point. It's no sport bike, and it's no badass cruiser, but the PC800 is definitely a very capable bike that does pretty much everything you'd want a motorcycle to do.
Even in 30 years since its original introduction, the PC800 looks like a thoroughly modern motorcycle. But it was too far ahead of its time to succeed. Its futuristic looks turned off current riders, and its Chad Tree Surgeon style marketing campaign turned off would-be riders who didn't want to be associated with that kind of image either. I've actually tried to get rid of this bike more than once. First, when I got my Honda Shadow, because I wanted something a little more badass. I wanted the chrome and the flashiness and something I'd feel badass on. And the bike came back to me. But that's not a bad thing that this bike just keeps going and going and going like the Energizer Bunny. The only major downside to this bike is its age. When I had a major service done a few years back, they had to source good but used coils for the ignition system because new ones weren't available. And don't get me started on the plastic. Before everyone rushes to the comments and tells me how this isn't quite lined up or this isn't clipped in properly, the plastics on this particular bike are more than 20 years old. They've gotten very brittle in the sun, and they are made of unobtainium. They are extremely difficult to find, even on the internet. At this point, I'm actually looking forward to rolling the odometer back to all zeros, which is only going to be another 30,000 miles. I've put 20,000 on since I bought it, and the bike shows no sign of slowing down anytime soon. I have no doubt that it's actually capable of doing it. Many other PCs have 100,000, even 200,000 miles on them. I may be stuck with this bike, but I can think of many worse bikes to be stuck with.